So I want to kind of get into my training today, which is smart is the new rich. And this is really important because today is going to be a little bit different and out of the box for me. I think you guys are used to me and other leaders training on things like mindset to really help turn you around, get you inspired, make you feel like you can go out there and do anything that you want to do. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but today is going to be a little different. So the last time you guys seen me, I was up here yelling and screaming, calling out the people in the front row. Do you remember? Well, not today. Today is a little different. So I want you to get to know me a little bit better. And I want to tell you some things that I feel like that I've done right and some things that I could have done better. How many of you have some things that you know that you could be doing better right now in your life? So a little bit about me. I've always been either an entrepreneur or an overachiever. When I was in elementary school, I was the kid that used to ask their mom to take them to the Whole Food store and get candy, and then I would resell it to my friends when no one was looking. Then when I was in middle school, I was that kid where I would make freezy cups. How many of you remember those? And I used to sell them to all the neighborhood kids out of my home. When I was in high school, I went and I got my first job when I was 14 years old. I started working at a pretzel store, and I became not only just an employee, but I actually became the manager. I convinced the guy to give me the keys to the store. I also convinced him to let me hire all of my friends to work there. And then I went off to college, and I thought, you know what? I always saw a need for things. Where I came from in Baltimore, Maryland, I would go home and I loved to get my nails done, and I would get these fancy designs. And I would come back to school and everyone would say, "Where did you get your nails done at?" So I had some bright idea to go back home. There was a young lady who actually owned her own nail salon, and she would let me sit there every Saturday when I came home. And I would just sit for hours and hours and hours, and I would just watch her. And she taught me how to do nails. So I went back to school and I started my own nail salon in college, right out of my apartment. I feel like I've always been the type that said, if there's something that you want, you go after it. You go get it. And that was no different in my personal life. I knew that I wanted to be with someone who could handle me. You probably don't know how hard that is to find. But I also wanted to be with someone that I respected. I wanted to be with someone who loved my children. I wanted to be with someone who I felt was an equal and that we were both on the same path. It was all about going after what I wanted in life. We decided we wanted to buy a big home, and because of the 5 Links opportunity, we went and bought a $2 million home to raise our family in. Before I purchased the home, I knew I wanted to be in a nice community. Like I knew, how many of you know what kind of home you want right now? Are you thinking about it? Have you seen it? Have you driven by it a few times? Are you that creep that drives in somebody else's neighborhood? That's you, right? That was me, and I knew, I said, this is the neighborhood I want to live in. This is the home that I want to have to raise my children in. I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew that nothing would happen, though, without keeping God first. And this was such an important part of our journey. We decided we're going to pray every night. Before every event, we're going to make sure that we go off and we pray before we leave. This was such an important part to us, and we knew that we couldn't accomplish great things without first recognizing that. Then I knew I wanted to lose some weight. You take a look at that picture on the left, that was actually me. Doesn't look like me though, does it? That was actually right here on the main stage in 5 Links. And as you can see, I had just as much confidence back then as I do today, even with the weight. But I knew I wanted a different life. I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to feel better about myself. And so I committed to changing my eating habits. I actually committed to taking the products that we sell. How about that? We knew that if we didn't show others that we have a great product, then how can we convince someone to do something that we weren't willing to do ourselves? And still today, we still take the products to maintain our health. Here are my children. Can you guess the one that is like me? It would be the one in the middle, yes, standing there like this. Sometimes I almost wonder if I was reinvented in someone smaller. And I wanted so much more for them. I wanted to be able to travel. Traveling was so important, and 5 Links has allowed us to travel to places like Dubai and going to places like Alaska coming up. And I knew if I worked hard enough that I could get these things to happen. But what I really wanted was not only to have it for ourselves, but to be able to have it for our children. How many of you have grown up and maybe the furthest you've ever went as a child is to the park, to the neighborhood pool? Well, I can tell you the furthest I went as a child was just going to visit family members. I lived in Baltimore and we went to DC. And there were so many things that I wanted to make sure that growing up that my kids had a different life for themselves. So we would vacation with them. We wanted to experience new things with them. Have you ever done this before where the fish eat at your feet? We wanted to create the home for them, give them an environment that I never had as a child. And the most important part, when I started to think about what did I want, is I wanted to pass down more than just money. I started thinking that if something was to happen to me today, what would they have? And was money enough? And I knew that it wasn't. And so I started asking myself, well, what would I like to leave behind? And the true answer for me was not money. The true answer was for them to learn how to fish, to teach them how to build their own, to teach them how to make their own money. And what better way to do that than just to say, go out and get more money, but let me show you how to get more money. So I created a book for my children, and they were in the process with me. They would have so much fun. They created the stories. The animation is all of them. And they had to get up and speak. This is my son at King's Ignite Conference. But can you imagine your children breaking through fears that most adults have and getting them to experience things at a young age that they'll have for the rest of their life? The fun parts was when I started to watch them in action. We started to do our events, and they had to sell their books. When they were in the 5 Links crowd, they would sell tons of books. And they kept saying, let's go to a 5 Links event. I said, oh, no, no, no. 5 Links is mommy's money. I'm going to show you how to make your own money. So I started sending them out to events that were non-5 Links related. And they said, whoa, this is really different. Oh, you actually have to work for your money. So I used to put little competitions together, and they would go out, and I said, who could sell the most books? And they said, how do we do that when everyone is supposed to come to our table? And I would say things like, you don't wait on them. You go out and you get them to come to you. Building their confidence, telling them what they had to do. And this was all of a part of, I felt like this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted the family, I wanted the children, and I wanted Diamond. And I got exactly what I wanted. But it was something that was missing. And I couldn't figure out what it was. But every day I would wake up and it just felt like something was uneasy. It's kind of like that feeling when you wake up and you don't want to go to work. Do you know that feeling? Maybe it's the feeling you have. Let me ask you guys over here. Maybe it's the feeling when the bill collector calls. Do you know that feeling? It's not a good feeling, is it? All of these things, you get into this business and you feel like you're trying to get rid of all of those issues, all of those problems. You come into this great world of what we call like just the world of self-improvement, and you're trying to improve yourself in so many areas. And most of us think that money will fix every problem. But I learned something that I couldn't figure out in 10 years of doing business. 10 years of coming to conferences and trying to get to the top. 10 years of sitting from the back to the middle to the front. 10 years of making millions of dollars. And I couldn't figure out, and it was something that was missing. And I didn't realize it until something major happened. And it took some time, and it took a lot of self-talk, took a lot of meditation. I went to a lot of conferences, but I realized there was something missing, and I was on a road, and I had no idea where I was going, and I was lost. And I was trying to find out what it was that I had worked so hard, so many hours, so many years of my life, and how in the heck was something missing. I'm in shape. I'm healthy. I have a great marriage. I live in a beautiful home. I have wonderful children. And I make a lot of money. So what could possibly be wrong? Well, I started going to conferences. And I went to this conference by Anthony Robbins. How many remember seeing him here at the national conference? I go to this conference and I spent $10,000 for him to tell me something that I should have known a long time ago. But sometimes you can't put a price tag on what you learn. And what I realized was that I was making money and I had no idea what to do with it. So I wanted a destination. I wanted to get to a final end. And what I realized is what I really was missing in my life was true wealth. And the sad thing is that all along, I just thought wealth was making millions. I didn't know that true wealth was keeping millions. I had been living in a social media world, new outfits so that no one knows you wear the same thing. Is that the stupidest thing that you've ever heard of? Of course we wear the same thing more than once. I had been buying $3,000 shoes. I had been taking vacations that cost me over $20,000. I had been spending everything that I was making. Why? Because no one told me to do anything else with it. They only told me to get motivated. They only told me to go out here and get to the top. They only told me to become successful. No one has sat down and said, this is what you do with your money. And here's the sad part, is that you don't have to make a lot of money to know what to do with it. right before I came on the stage, I put something out on social media, and there's this chart that you look at, and it shows this kid who starts investing when they're 19 years old. And he only invests $2,000 a year from 19 to 26. At 65, when it's time for him to retire, he then has $2.2 million that he's put away and has gained compounded interest over time. Then they show the next person. They start at 27, $2,000 from 27 all the way to 65, and they only have $1.5 million. Now, how is it the one person who put in less, but they started early, how do they finish rich? And they haven't even made $1 million. Because it's all about knowing what to do with your money. We're all in 5 Links, not only just to have success, but I hope we're here to have true wealth. And that's exactly what I discovered I wanted. I didn't want to look good in front of others. I wanted to look good on paper. So I started asking myself, and this is how I started off on my journey. Now, I want you to see something. I am extremely passionate about my wealth. And I had to ask myself, what do you want? What is going to get rid of the feeling that you have inside? And I started going through a journey, reading books. But more importantly, some of the things that I did that most people will never do is I started asking wealthy people, what do you do with your money? There was this one time, I was jogging in my neighborhood, and where I live, there's very expensive homes. And there's this one home that I really love. And I always say, that's gonna be my house. Right there, that one is mine. Like the kid who's in the car with their parents and they're sitting in the back seat, and as the cars ride by, they say, that's my car. Have you ever done that as a kid? Well, every day as I would jog by in the neighborhood, I would say, that's my house. And I really don't know how it's gonna be my house. I just know that one day he's gonna move out and I'm gonna move in. But what I said was, why not just knock on their door? So I knocked. He answered. I introduced myself. I asked him what he did with for a living. And then we got into a conversation. And of course, the next question was, can I ask you something personal? What do you do with your money? Then I went on to ask some of my friends. We've been blessed to have a great network of friends, whether it be in 5 Links or out of 5 Links, and some friends that make more money than us. And I would call them on the phone. I said, I need you to call me back. I have a question. I got to ask you something. And usually when we get those questions, that's somebody that wants to borrow money, right? But I didn't want to borrow money. What I wanted to borrow was information. And I asked, what do you do with your money? And I wanted to know, if I come up with a plan from everything I'm reading and everything that I'm hearing, am I going down the right path? So there were some things that I realized, here's some things where I wish I was today if I would have done things a little bit different sooner. I'm going to give you some of my strategies that I've used, and then I'm also going to show you how to implement these strategies into your life. Is that okay? So here are some things I've realized that I wanted, and what my definition of true wealth was, is that not to make $1 million, but I wanted to have millions of dollars in assets. I wanted to own my own home. Before that, I wanted to be debt-free. How many of you in here would love to be debt-free? I wanted a certain amount of my money put in stocks and bonds. I wanted rental real estate properties that I own free and clear to pay off my expenses. I wanted a 1-year emergency fund, and I wanted a profitable business doing what I love. I started putting together my, what I call freedom plan, because I think budget just sounds so old school. And here's how my freedom plan went. I started off by creating my plan by looking at my expenses for my last 3 months. I started to look at things that I was spending money on, and I would put a column for food, bills, personal care, clothes, and gas. And then I would look my past 3 months for each month, and I would start making calculations of how much I was spending in each category. And then what I knew is that if I can save more, then I can get to my destination faster. Does that make sense? So I started cutting back. My husband thought I was crazy, and even my friends. They would say things like, let's go to this conference, and I would say, I don't have the money. My husband would say, let's eat out, and I would say, we don't have the money. Someone would ask me, are you doing this? And I would say, I don't have the money. And it wasn't that I didn't have the money, but I knew that if I didn't change the mindset of how I spend money, that I'll never change how my bank account adds up. The average household spends 12.9% of their income on food. You'll be surprised how much you can save with just cutting back on food. How many of you are aware of how much money you spend on food? Have you added it up? Do you keep track of it every single month? I started using apps like Mint. How many of you have heard of that app? And I set a budget for myself, and I get really obsessive. What's the word? Obsessive. Just like my business, I'm obsessive about my wealth. So I make sure we don't spend over our money in groceries every single month. Take a look at what my income was adding up to. I started cutting back on my hair and my nails. Now remember, I told you, I used to have a nail salon. And I was paying somebody $70 a week to do my own nails when I could truly do it for myself. So I started cutting back. I started learning how to do my own hair. And before you know it, my hair was actually growing healthier than it had ever been in my entire life. How many of you guys have noticed? I cut out our eating out. I cut out shopping. Look how much I cut out of my clothing budget. Then I started getting really obsessive. We started cutting back on our lawn care, cutting back on a storage bill. I took everything out of storage and I said, no, we're gonna get rid of that. Anything we can get rid of that we could save as much as we can for the next 2 to 3 years so that we can have millions of dollars that are put away. We're gonna cut back every single penny that we can. And before I knew it, I had saved $7,500 in just in expenses. And then I decided I wanted to be debt-free. But I knew at the rate I was going that it wouldn't happen for a very long time. So I started reading books like Dave Ramsey, The Total Money Makeover. And I came up with a plan. I would make a list of everything I owed, how much I owed, and my interest rates. And then I would total it out. And every single month, anything that I was saving on, I would take that money and I would apply it to my smallest loan, the principal of that loan, every month. Well, in just 4 months, I paid off my car. I also had an IRS debt, and I just been paying them every single month. And some people think when you make a lot of money, you don't owe people. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. I had tickets that I didn't even know I had. And I paid off $260,000 in just 4 months by saving and cutting back. And the real reason I did it, because I started to look at how much money I was paying others for me to have things. I used great apps, and I looked at my car and I said, well, if I keep going at this rate, I'll pay them an extra $10,000. Why don't I create a plan where I can then take that money and pay myself? So then I wanted to pay off my home. In America, the home is probably the biggest asset that most people will ever own. The average American spends 3.5% of their income on just interest payments alone. So what did I do? I learned how to first increase my credit score. Yes, diamonds have bad credit too. I went from a 649 to a 750 in 30 days. I was pretty impressed with myself. You would have thought I hit diamond all over again. Called my husband, I said, babe, you won't believe this. I now have a 750 credit score. This never happened in my entire life. And the only thing I did was I asked someone, how do you fix your credit? And they told me exactly what to do. It took me less than an hour to put a plan in place and to implement it, to make the phone calls, and 30 days later, increase of 101 points. So what we did was we refinanced our home. I went from a 5.2 interest rate to a 3.2, just in having a better credit score. I saved myself $2,500 on interest payments. That's $30,000 a year, going from a 30-year to a 15-year fixed rate. So let me ask you a few questions. How many of you own a home? Which option sounds better to you? Option 1, 80% of your money going towards interest, or option 2, a 30-year fixed rate at 6%. Which one would you say? 1 or 2? Put your fingers up in the air. 1 or 2? I see 2. I see 2s. I see 2s. 80% of your money going towards interest, or what? A 30-year? 2s? Well, guess what? They're the same. Over the course of a 30-year mortgage at 6% interest rate, you'll pay 100% of what you borrowed. So if you borrowed $100,000 for your home, you'll wind up paying $200,000. If you borrowed $500,000, you'll wind up paying $1 million. That's a lot of money, don't you say? So let's just say you say, well, maybe I can't refinance right now. Well, let me show you some strategies of some things you can do to cut your mortgage in half so that you can own your home a lot sooner. So what you can do is you can look at what you pay in principal every single month. And if you have a 30-year 6%, you're going to see that only 20% of it is going towards your actual principal. And only thing you have to do is every month pay an extra payment of just your principal. And it'll cut your loan time in half, which will mean that it'll cut what you owe in half. Does that make sense? Then I wanted to get into stocks and bonds, because I heard from a lot of experts that compounding interest is your friend, and that the average return in the stock market is 10% over time, meaning you're going to pay 10% of your money. Now, right now, most Americans, if you have your money in a money market account with your bank, you're getting paid less than 1%. It's somewhere around 0.3 to 0.4% that you get on your money. So obviously, having it in the stock market, you can make more money. There's chance of winning, there's chance of losing, but if you keep it in there and over time, you can gain 10% on the money that you put in. The average American has less than $100,000 put towards their retirement. The more I would talk to individuals, the more I would see that most people were not saving for tomorrow. They were only living for today. So I wanted to be a little bit different. So I took all the money that I had saved from cutting back on expenses, cutting back on my interest from my mortgage, and I wanted to put that towards tomorrow. So take a look at this. I saved myself between the interest and cutting back $10,000 a month. Over the next 10 years, invested in the stock market with a 10% return, that $10,000 will turn into $2 million. Over the next 20 years, it'll turn into $7.5 million. Now, maybe you're saying, I don't have $10,000 a month. Well, let me show you another example. Let's just say, for instance, you sit down and you look at all your expenses, you figure out a way you can cut back as much as possible, and let's just say you can put an extra $1,000 towards your tomorrow. What's some other ways that you can get $1,000 without just cutting back? 5 links. How many of you feel like, yeah, I can make an extra $1,000 in this business? What about if you just go out and you get into the 50 customer club? Or what about if you get into the 100 customer club? How much extra money is that a month? What is it? $500. What would happen if you and your spouse got into the 100 customer club? How much money is that extra a month? $1,000. So don't tell me you can't find an extra $1,000, because if you can't find it by saving, you can definitely find it by going out there and working for it. An extra $1,000 a month invested over 10 years for you will add up to $200,000. Over 20 years, $759,000. Over 30 years, $2.2 million. What if you say, I want to do a little more? That sounds great, right? Maybe you want to actually bring in some IMRs. You want to actually open your mouth and go out there and talk to people. That can happen, right? What if you want to actually say, I want to build a team, and you want to add on to that $1,000, and you want to figure out a way where you can make an additional $2,000? How many of you think that between the new products we have, between the promotions we have, between customer gathering, bonus pools that we have, do you think it's possible for you to make an additional $2,000 a month? So what we're going to do is we're going to work hard. We're going to build our business, and we're not going to throw our money away. We're going to take it, and we're going to do what with it? We're going to invest it. Now, what happens if you invest $2,000 over the next 10 years? I've been in 5 links for 10 years. How much money will you end up with? $409,000. What about if you do it for 20 years? How much will you wind up with? $1.5 million. So don't tell me you can't become a millionaire. Don't tell me you can't make it happen. If you do it over 30 years and you learn how to save and invest in yourself first, you'll wind up with $4.5 million. Is that not exciting? So let me give you a few tips. You have to save more than you spend. And I know this is a concept for most of us that we like to spend before we save. But I promise you, you don't want to look back and you don't want to have regrets. You want to enjoy the journey. I know that putting money away can feel like you're taking away from the joy, but I want you to think about the joy that you're going to have in the years to come. The only thing I could think of is that there is going to become a day where my children are going to be in a position where they could possibly have to take care of me. And I never want to put them in a financial burden because of that. It's time to become smart about every single thing that we do, so that the journey that we have is one that when you look back and you're in the rocking chair and you're enjoying your later years, I want you to be happy about every decision, about everything that you decided to do. And I don't want you to ever say at no time, like I'm saying today, is that someone did not tell me. Because today, I am telling you to save now and invest now before it's too late. Pay attention to your wealth. If that means listening to podcasts, if that means reading books, you cannot find what you're not looking for. This is such an important part of life, and I promise you, the more you know, the more you can teach someone else, and that someone else could be your children. The more you know, you can teach someone else. That someone else could be your spouse. The more you know, the more you can teach, and that someone else could be a business partner. And more importantly, that someone else is going to be you. So do not take it for granted. Do not believe that, you know what, I don't make enough to learn what to do with it. Every single person makes enough to know what to do with their money, or to want to know what to do with their money. So the harder you work, the more luck you will have. Invest in yourself. Don't wait until you have money before you learn what to do with it. And I want you to learn to start building your foundation today. This is so important. So much so important that if you don't, your house will be built, but you'll realize that it was built on quicksand. We all make mistakes. We all can look back and say, you know what, if I would have known today what I know now, and if I could have taught myself that years ago, I would be in such a better place. Well, guess what? You can never relive yesterday. You can only live for tomorrow. So here's what I would love for you to do. I want you to look down the road, and I want you to ask yourself, what is it that I really want? Why am I here? So many people are involved in the opportunity, but they don't give it their all. So many people want something, but they really don't want to work for it. Years ago, when I was involved in 5 Links and I started working hard and it started compromising my job, I said to another leader, I said, I'm going to have to stop 5 Links. He said, why? I said, because it's interfering with my job. And I'm about to get in trouble. They're about to fire me. I need to stop 5 Links and I need to start focusing back on my job. And he said, well, let me ask you something. What do you want? I said, I want to work for myself. I want to be successful. He said, do you want the job? I said, not really. He said, then why would you work for something that you don't really want? And that was such a profound question at the time. And I had to ask myself, what is it that I really want? And I'm going to ask you today, what is it that you want? Because diamond is not enough. If it was, everyone would be here. You have to really ask yourself, what are you looking to gain? And what's going to make you go through a brick wall to get it? What is going to make you go above and beyond anything that you've ever thought of, anything that you've ever wanted to do? What is going to make you get out of this convention and actually open up your mouth? What's going to make you go crazy and go out there and say, you know what? I don't care about this no more. I don't care what people say. I'm talking to everybody out there. Everybody's going to hear about my business. I'm reading every book. I'm going to get better. I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a better leader. And before you know it, they're going to have to make a new position for me. Because they have no idea what I have inside of me. They have no idea what I'm capable of. But at some point, you got to get to a point when you say enough is enough. I come here every time. I sit in these seats. I wait in long lines. At what point am I going to be an SVP? You say you want it, right? You want it? That's what you say? You can want all day long. We all want things. I want $1 billion. I want to have Oprah's lifestyle. We all want things. But nothing's going to happen until you stop wanting and you start working. You're here to get information. You're here to learn from other leaders. And if I can't impress anything upon you at this moment, I want to impress this upon you, is that you have to know where you want to go. In everything that you do and every day, you have to have good intention. You have to follow through on the focus of what you want for your life. You can't spend 10 hours working and 1 hour on your business and think you're going to be a millionaire. You can't make excuses every day and say, okay, but I can't because I'm tired, but I can't because I don't have a babysitter, but I can't because people don't have the money. You can't make excuses and then ultimately think that you're going to get to the top. Excuses don't get you to the top. No one's going to give it to you because you're pretty. I'm cute, right? But they're not going to give it to you because that doesn't matter. Because no one's giving you anything. And you know that because no one's giving you anything up until this point. You waiting on an upline. You waiting on somebody else to do something for you. You making excuses. All you got to do is complain and talk and what are they doing and what's this person doing and what somebody else is doing. I want you to ask yourself, what are you doing? Your time is running out. It's running out. No one's going to wait for you forever to become successful. You have to do it now. So when you leave here, it's not like it's hard. It's not like it's complicated. It just requires you giving 100% of yourself. That's all it requires. And I promise you, 100% is enough of who you are. So when you get your money right, and everyone else is on Instagram acting like they got money and knowing they don't, I want you to feel confident in the story that I told you today. Because even if you're making a little bit, you can become rich just by being smart, just by doing things different, just deciding that you're going to be someone that your friends weren't. So today, we're going to leave this convention, and as we go out after the weekend is over, don't let this be like the times before. Be different, be smart, and make sure you become the smart is the new rich. Thank you guys so much.